Have you ever been introduced to a framework or a model that just stuck with you, that made sense, that gave you a better sense of what's going on in your world, your sense of reality? Well, that very thing happened to me about 10 plus years ago when I was introduced to the Leadership Circle framework and 360 assessment. The framework helped me put language to what was going on with my leadership, where I was falling short, and what was holding me back and, quite frankly, driving a lot of my ineffectiveness. I recently had a chance to speak with Bob Anderson, who created that very framework 40 plus years ago. And we got to talk about where leadership is going and how that leadership framework is more relevant today than ever before. Bob is the co-founder of the Leadership Circle and currently serves as their chief knowledge officer. He has a heart and passion for leadership development and has dedicated his career to exploring the intersections between leadership and personal mastery, between competence and consciousness. A few years ago, Bob co-authored with Bill Adams the book Mastering Leadership, an integrated framework for breakthrough performance and extraordinary business results. And a couple of years ago, he co-authored with Bill and wrote Scaling Leadership, building organizational capability and capacity to create outcomes that matter most. I have respected Bob's work for years, and if I had anything to say with it, he would be inducted to the Leadership Development Hall of Fame. I don't even know if that exists, but whatever. He's one of those people that I look up to for insights around where leadership is going and how we all can become better leaders. This is the L2L podcast brought to you by the StarQuest Group. I'm your host, Tom Athenour. Let's dive into my conversation with Bob. All right. Welcome, Bob.
Great to be here.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Well, I've respected your work for years and have been using your models and assessments with our leadership work. And so it's absolutely fantastic to have you here today. So welcome. So curious, if I were sitting next to you on a plane or meeting you at the United Lounge or wherever we all hang out in airports, and I said, so who are you and what do you do? How would you introduce yourself?
Oh, that's the toughest question, I think. Well, I think mostly I'm a teacher. I'm not a consultant anymore. I've spent my whole life, one of the ways I talk about it is living at the edge of irrelevance. So I go to the edge of the leading edge of many, many disciplines. And I learn and I distill and I integrate and I try to bring it back into forms that are powerful and accessible to people. And then that translates into things like the Leadership Circle profile and workshops and so on, things that I've created. And then those things end up in books and so on. So I'm basically a creator, a thought leader. And kind of in our field, I would be akin to a physicist.
Okay.
Yeah. Deeply trying to understand the fundamental nature of reality and how things actually work and how to translate that into processes and ways of thinking and being that help leaders be more effective and coaches and consultants.
We're talking about how leaders need to be looking at things differently today and in the future. And so maybe that's where we start. Does that work with you?
Yeah, it's a great place to start. I think we're in, I'm sure every generation going through difficult times says we're in unprecedented times, but certainly that's true. We're in unprecedented times. And we were just on a Zoom call this morning with one of the leading neurologists in the world. His credentials are so long I won't even start. And he's now, including into that one, he's developed the All Life Institute. And part of that is how do we care for the future, not only of humanity, but all of life and the planet itself, because it's all at stake. And we know this. And so not only are leaders challenged with unprecedented volatility and uncertainty and ambiguity and so on, what we've called VUCA and then BANI, but it's beyond that even. we're actually, I think, challenged with redesigning our very relationship with the planet on all levels, with each other, the future of like energy, financial systems, um, governance systems. These major systems that have brought us so far are now not up to the challenge, and the world order as we know it is imploding. And so leaders have to, one, navigate that and thrive, help the organization thrive through all of that, but ideally then position themselves and or be part of the solution. In other words, how do we
Yes.
take our business to the next level so that we're part of inventing the future that needs to and is trying to happen on this planet?
Yeah, so true.
That's a tall order.
It's a tall order, and my senses and what I've seen out there is that leaders are not necessarily equipped to be able to take that to that next level up.
No. One of the things we discovered or learned as we reflected on our book, the data from our book, Scaling Leadership, is that leaders are, and this resonates with our experience too. There's the old notion of the Peter principle where you're promoted to your highest level of incompetence, and then you either fail out or
Yeah.
your career caps, and that's a
Yeah.
really like positive notion of our futures. But
Yeah.
what we see is not that that leaders reach the limit of their competence or capability; they reach the limit of their development. They reach
Okay.
developmental limits where they can't scale their leadership to the next level of effectiveness, not because they lack the talent and or some skills. And the know-how part is the easy part to learn.
Yes.
They lack the development, the personal development that's required to do that.
And so is the development piece, and for those of you out there, this is the book that he's referring
Yeah,
to, and the
yeah.
research and whatnot around scaling leadership. Great book. Um, when you talk about they reach that capacity or the threshold, maximize their development potential, is that what I'm hearing? Meaning they don't have the capacity to learn more. What do you mean by
No, it
development?
isn't
As
learn more. It's with more complexity brings on developmental challenges. So, for example, one of the cases we mention in that book is a leader who, when and Bill was the coach in this situation, Bill walks into the office. This person heads up a large part of a multinational company. I won't get into specifics, although I think we did mention specifics in the book. And was just promoted. So now 70% of a global company reports to him.
okay.
And when Bill walks in, the guy looks at him and says, "Let me be really clear about this. I'm not going to hug you when we're done here."
Okay.
Just code for, I don't buy all this touchy-feely crap.
Yes. Yes. That is code. Yeah.
So let's just be clear about that.
Mm-hmm.
So they're looking at his profile, and he's got an almost zero score on work-life balance. And he's real strong on, autocratic and so on. And Bill finds the perfect opener. So your leadership has reached limits to scale. Oh, now he's interested. Tell me about that. Well, how many hours are you working? No, really, how many hours are you working? Right? And you just got promoted, so you went from 40% of the organization to 70% of the organization. How are you going to scale to that? Because it looks like you're trying to use your brilliance to be across everything. And you can't do that anymore. That won't scale for you. That's the developmental challenge.
Okay.
It's not so much a competency challenge. This guy's off the charts with
It's a
capability.
mindset. It's a mindset
It's the
challenge. It's an
mindset of I have
yeah.
to learn how to have to learn how to lead completely differently than what has worked for me in the past.
Yeah.
And that pushes me up against a fear of failure and anything else that might be in there. But it also means I have to now move from, and this was what we found in scaling leadership, the big move from reactive to creative is moving from my technical competence, my industry knowledge, my technical knowledge, my know-how, my ability to be on top of everything, from that to scaling leaders, leveraging myself through building the capacity of others
Yes.
and teams.
Yeah.
And that's a whole different capacity. And if you don't cross that threshold, you run into limits. And some of that is skill, but there's a lot that we face just in letting go of, or in delegating or trusting a team to do what I have held tightly before. So
Which
that would
is
be one
easier.
example of meeting a developmental challenge right in the middle of it.
That's a great example because it's mindset. It's, you could argue, well, it's a growth mindset. I get that, but there's a huge attachment and grip that leaders that hold on to those because they have gotten them to where they are today, and
Right.
they are it's such a part of their identity that
Yes.
it's a full release, and that's scary. I mean, that is vulnerability on steroids.
Yes. And
Yeah.
this is what's worked for me. This has been my success formula. This is what makes me me, effective, valuable, worthwhile. And now I have to reinvent that. And you
So
mentioned the notion that it goes to identity. So, for example, in that particular case, there's a lot of identity around my capability and my ability to get results, or my technical knowledge, or this is what really makes me me. Well, that's not the case. It's a
yeah,
skill I have, but it doesn't define me. And to the extent that we get that mixed up, which you can almost not do growing up, um, we sideline other capabilities. We don't develop them. And then to let go of this one, or to begin to include others, feels very threatening to the core of who I think I am.
absolutely. I think that's right there. That's so center that keeps people from releasing that and being open to new ways. I'm reading this book by Henry Cloud called Necessary Endings, and it's really an interesting aspect because I
Mm.
read it through the lens of the circle, kind of the leadership profile circle and the universal framework. And we're so hesitant to let go of things and
Yeah,
close things and end
yeah,
things that
yeah,
it keeps us from actually moving into new frontiers,
yeah,
new areas. And that's what I'm
exactly.
hearing is a developmental challenge
Yeah,
for people.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of Frederick Hudson's book, who was the founder of the Hudson's Coaching School, wrote a book
Yeah.
called The Adult Years. And he talks about the creative process of adult life. The myth we have is that it's an upward, kind of constantly upward trajectory, successful
Yes.
people. What he found was it's more like a cycle where actually at times everything comes apart. I the old, I create this really successful organization, it's thriving, and I'm everything, and then pretty soon I face that it's like the same year over again, and the
Yeah.
same year over again, and that's an invitation to uh, move through this cycle of change or creativity. And he said one of the most powerful quotes in the book for me was, the reason we end up in dull, bored, or stuck lives is not because we don't have the capacity to create, it's because we don't have the capacity for death, for the letting go,
Yes.
for
Yeah.
like, okay, it needs to come apart. I need to leave this behind. I need to let this go in order for a whole new expansion to happen.
So what I'm hearing from you is that is one of the biggest or the biggest impediment for leaders being able to scale their leadership.
Yeah, that transition, we call it reactive to creative, but underneath it is, for example, Bob Keegan's work moving from a socialized to self-authored mindset.
Hmm.
That's huge. And I mean, uh, it's bigger than we give credit for. It's part of the reason I created the Leadership Circle profile, because our field is really good at oversimplifying and saying these are the five simple steps to success. And what they don't want to talk about is that right in the middle of that is a hero's journey, where the old self actually has to go through a metamorphosis,
Yeah.
like a butterfly. There's the larva stage, and then it spins a cocoon, and if you open it, which we did as kids, there's just goo in there. They've melted down, and then there's this magical process of it reconfigures itself into a completely different structure and form, and it's capable now of winged life and agility and beauty and grace and higher perspective. And it no longer crawls on the ground, it can fly. This is the possibility of a major transformation like this. But the old self goes through a kind of complete reconfiguration. And so we underestimate how frightening that can be.
So let's go back for some folks that some of our listeners may not be familiar with Bob Keegan's work. So, socialized self is where your sense of identity is defined by the outside world,
Right.
expectations from the
Right.
outside world.
Yeah.
Self-authored is what you believe is how you want to show up. What's most important to you? How do you honor
Right.
that sense of
Right.
self and show
Right.
up differently?
Yeah.
And that's what you need in order to be able to move upwards from
Right.
reactive to creative.
Reactive, I'm living from my conditioned self. This is who I've been taught I am. This is who I have to be in order to be okay. This is what's
Yeah.
worked for me. This is what I got in trouble for. And so I'm trying to live from the voices of my surround, whether that be people long in my past, cultural norms that I've been told I have to be, what it means to be a man or a woman, um, and so on. So I'm living from this external standard and conditioning. And at some point, like what happened for me was a real wake up call when I said to myself in the middle of the night, I was working nights, I'm not becoming who I am.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Oh, and then a new question emerges. Well, and the form of that question for me was, what must I be about with this life in order to live the life I came here to live and not someone else's life?
Yes. Yeah.
That's the question that moved me into self authoring.
And so that self-authored self is it's up like a prerequisite to being able to show up above the line, as a lot of our listeners are familiar with above the line in the creative domain or the operating systems on north of the line. There has to be some sense of that self-authored self to be able to show up in the most effective way on that creative side. Am I hearing you correctly? Like,
Yes.
you have to really
Yes.
release some of the control from the old and those
Right.
reactive tendencies.
Absolutely. So there's a kind of dual process. One is seeing uh, the fundamental assumptions that are running the reactive self. So for me, for example, I got clear when it really got clear for me. I was getting feedback that I wasn't leading very effectively and so on. And it got really clear that I'm trying to lead and I want everybody to like me. I'm trying to be an agent of change in this organization. And every moment I got to have everybody like and respect and admire
Yeah.
me and so on, especially
Yep.
the people above. At this point, I was a director in an organization reporting to the top team, especially the people above in whose hands I place my future. Right. And so that's the first, is like, that was the opening for me to see my one core equation. I've got a bunch of them, but one of them was, you define me, and I'm okay, worthwhile, if you like me, if you
Yes.
respect me.
Yep.
And that makes me over agreeable. That makes me play too nice. I don't have difficult conversations. Hedge my, I don't stand in my own power, so people don't really take me seriously. All of that stuff was seen. And the core equation, which is when you really see it and spend time with it, it's not the case. I'm not made up by you.
Yes. Right.
My future is not in your hands. My worth is not determined by your view of me. In fact, as you move on in this, the whole notion of self-worth disappears. It's just a construction.
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
okay because I'm worthwhile because. Well, you just dropped the because
Yeah.
at some point. And and that frees up a lot of energy that's been tightly controlled. And then the question is, well, what would you do if you could? What would you do if you weren't so worried about what other people think? Or in the case of the person we just talked about, what would I do if I wasn't so worried about having to be the one that always drives the
Yeah.
results?
Yeah. Yeah. The tip of
Right?
the spear. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. And
Hmm.
as you see the core equation as kind of a false equation, it frees up energy. And then you say, well, now I can play a much bigger game. And that's the self authored self. And it's a requirement for leadership. It's a requirement.
Regardless of whatever, because we talk about the creative space and there's this next level up because leaders will ask us, okay, so we really work on the creative and we'll bounce back the reactive. That's called the human experience, right? So
Yep.
it's not like we're
Yep.
trying to
I do it every day.
the reactive actually has some benefits to it, right? It just limits you from the ability to scale and expand and have greater impact. Is that a good way to put it? Because I think it's important that we don't see reactive as bad, kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
negative, and creative's good. I don't think you can
It's
play in that
actually more
binary.
beautiful even than that. It's that embedded in the reactive is a core gift. Like I put my best in it. So I'm a people oriented, caring person. And growing up and on the playground and the sports fields, that wasn't validated. So I had to hide it and I had to get on with it. Right. So um, we take our best and we put it in a strategy of, in my case, um, you know, being agreeable or nice or
Right. Right.
always saying yes when I want to say no. So, but embedded in that is a gift around people. And
Yes.
when you move that to the creative, you get much more of the full deployment of that gift. Now I have my relationship capability with power to
Okay.
say yes,
That
power
makes
to
really
say
good
no,
sense.
power to confront, power to challenge, power to not be liked. I'm not, and that, but I keep the gift. So embedded reactive is just a gift being run through fear,
Yeah.
through a
Yeah.
play not to lose um, structure.
Yeah. So that makes complete sense. And what I'm hearing from you is just the incredible, I mean, the level of importance around you've got to be able to close some doors. To your point around death, it's a letting go. You got to let it go to be able to move into new frontiers and try new ways and be able to pull those gifts up above, kind of above that line. When you look at leaders out there, one of the things that we talked about when we were prepping was this concept of integral leadership. Talk
Yeah,
to us a little bit about that because it's introduced and unpacked in your book, the first book,
yeah,
Mastering Leadership. But
yeah.
talk to us around why that's important today as
Well,
leaders for us to be aware of.
I think of the creative level of leadership as sort of minimum specs. Like if you were to say, on a computer, what's the minimum, or a program, here's your minimum system specs in order to run this program.
Yeah.
Creative is minimum system specs for leaders today. But it's becoming outmatched now by the kind of complexity we talked about when we started. And so it's necessary and not fully adequate. In fact, it's not adequate.
Naturally inadequate. Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Right. And so we're in a time where the complexities we face are putting a developmental demand on us that we move even beyond creative. And part of the markers for that are that nobody knows.
Which is scary in and of itself. Of that uncertainty.
Today, they're trying to navigate in the unknown. So, for example, Honda, I'm trying to remember all the aspects of their new vision. They call it the second founding. And it's in response to the world situation. All electric by 2050, but mostly by 2035.
Mm-hmm.
Now, think about that. They're the largest manufacturer of internal combustion engines in the world. They're going all electric. They want to have zero carbon footprint as a company. They want to have that car, have a relationship with that car or vehicle, cradle to grave, so everything is recycled. So it's a renewable economic system, regenerative. They want zero deaths in their automobiles. So this is their vision for the future. And you can see it as a response to the crisis that the planet is in.
Yes. Right.
And they have nobody knows how to do that. How do you maintain world leadership with your current fleet and reinvent it completely at the same time?
So it's what I'm hearing is the need and the capacity to be able to navigate and make decisions in the unknown.
Right.
It's like flying a plane in the fog. You can't see out the window. And yet the plane's still up there, right? You got to keep flying.
Right. Yeah.
That's what we're talking about.
Done that. I was an instrument pilot for a while.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I had
it's a weird sensation, I would guess. I've never had that, but I think about it. But that's what you're talking about when we're talking about this world of uncertainty.
Yeah.
Which only drives us back to what we know, right? Which is counter to what we're trying to do. I'm going to cling to what I know because I know it works, and I don't like uncertainty, so I'm going to go back. Is that what you're seeing out there?
That's the natural tendency, is to stay with what we know, and not. And this is where we're really starting to do some pioneering work. Einstein once said that. Now, this is one of the most brilliant physicists, well, probably the most brilliant physicist in the history of humanity, says, the intellect has little to do on the road to discovery. Now, just think about that.
You have to stop and think about that. Yeah, you really do.
What we said about the reactive leaders in the scaling conversation was they lead from their rational capability. Or technical know-how, what they know. And then Einstein's saying that if we really want to invent the new, we have to discover it. And the discovery process is not linear or rational.
Okay.
It's intuitive. He was a great advocate, as were many of the great inventors. If you look on our website, there's a series called the Deep Connect series. It's kind of buried down in the navigation at the bottom of the page.
Okay. And that's at leadershipcircle.com, right?
Yeah.
That website. Okay. Got it.
And one of the interviews there is with Federico Fagin, who invented the microprocessor. He invented the
Okay.
technology that made the microprocessor possible, and the first microprocessor. Then it got stolen by the guys that went and created Intel. Then they pulled him over to Intel, and so he was kind of the brains behind a lot of that technology. And then went on to be a
Okay.
serial inventor, serial entrepreneur. Um, he is now, and there's a whole story I won't get into, but he's now one of the leaders in consciousness research, because he now understands that that breakthrough, that insight came in an instant. He saw the whole thing after lots of struggle with trying to figure it out. It all came in at once. And it took him quite a while to unpack it, but it was a kind of course, that's how you do it.
Yeah.
I mentioned this neurologist, David Weaver. He's credited with major breakthrough in stroke epidemiology,
Hmm.
and that it took. He had a he and he was a man who was both very highly scientifically trained. He's written 370 journal publications, scientific peer-reviewed journal publications. So this is
Yeah.
as rational a human being as you know, but was also very interested in how does one expand awareness and open to insight. And he got the answer to this issue that had been vexing the entire field in the shower in a moment.
Hmm.
It all came in a second. And he had to get out of the shower immediately and write it down, because these things come in and so much information so fast. If you don't write it down immediately, capture as much of it as you can, you lose it, which has been my experience with innovation and breakthrough. So when we talk about the need to reinvent the future, there's an innovation requirement now, which is creating new, which means we don't know, which means we have to rely on an intuitive capacity to have it simply be revealed to us.
So what I'm hearing on the intuition, because I know that's becoming more of an emphasis. We are certainly talking more about relying upon that intuition, that gut sense
Yeah.
that the intellect or the thinking side may or may not pick that up. Usually it doesn't pick it up. What I'm hearing from you is, from your example, is the ability to think more holistically, kind of think bigger picture. You know, the old sort of the phrase, we've got to zoom back and look at all the elements. Are you talking about something bigger than that?
Bigger than that.
Okay.
I'm talking about, if you look at, say, Federico's work, he's saying that we're literally a quantum entity, that we're identified with the material body, but we're not that. That's, in fact, in physics, there is no material.
Hmm.
Einstein said it. You know, we're over 100 years from when he said it. There is no matter.
Yeah.
There's only energy, period, at a frequency that's reduced enough to become perceptible to the senses.
Okay.
And that energy, that configuration of energy, which we call an atom or a molecule or a proton, that's an
Yep.
energy configuration. But it's being mediated, if you will, or manifested by higher frequencies in the quantum field, which is a vast range. When you
Okay.
get into the quantum science, huge, the amount of energy and frequency, and energy and frequency is information in physics now. So it's an informational field that's forming everything.
So is
And
that,
so
yeah, go ahead.
there's so much here that's been discovered that's not in the mainstream. It's
Yeah.
literally not in the mainstream. And you can tap this field of intelligence. You have access to it, but we've never been taught that. So it's a matter of um, learning the capacity to raise the frequency of our attention or our
Okay.
mind,
Yeah.
to expand the frequency. And then, like, I have solar panels here. Well,
Yeah.
the inverters in the panels only work within a certain range of voltage, which is frequency. And if the grid goes too high and the panels can't match it, they shut down immediately. And the reason they do is because they can't talk to the grid.
Yeah.
They have
Yeah.
to match frequency in order for the energy to flow. So I can sell power back to the grid,
Yeah.
right? So this is the same thing. When we can match the frequency of the information that we're trying to access, it flows in like a thought ball. Like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
what David Weber's called the thought ball. It solved a major problem in neurology, or the invention of the microprocessor by Federico. Boom, it comes in. So learning the capacity to regulate my energy and open into more expanded states of awareness, run more current through my system, opens pathways to being informed by the stuff that we need to be informed about. And that's how we invent from unknowing.
So isn't it what we're talking about here? And I want to grind it down and really get practical on this. But what we're talking about is what you sense. It's you're sensing things. Is that not the same as intuition, or
It is the same
or
as
is there?
intuition.
It's the same. You're
It's the
picking up
same.
something at a different frequency, whether it's a gut sense. That's
Right.
what we're talking about here.
Right. And one of the faculty for our Unity Academy is an 82-year-old man who's been doing this with execs his whole career using Aikido. He's an
Okay. Yeah.
Aikido master.
Yeah.
And that's a very embodied physical practice, but he works with them. It helps open the field, and they literally go out and do intuition walks and so on, and they come back and share with what they've got. There's a practice of dialogue, which is groups moving beyond what they know and sitting together in the unknown and then speaking what comes. And it spirals in, and all of a sudden there's new insight or breakthrough. And this is being used at executive levels to reinvent the company, or
Yeah.
um, to do what seemed impossible in timeframes that seemed impossible.
Okay, so I'm going to take it down to a very basic level because I think there's some really interesting wisdom in
Help me
this.
with that, Tom.
So,
You're better at
okay,
that than
yeah,
I am.
okay. So I'm the VP of supply chain. I've got this horrendous problem. My world is all problem. Trying to figure out how this is all going to work. Is what I'm hearing. First of all, it requires a release because you can't do it alone. That's like you have to get more comfortable with releasing control. But when we take a look at solving complex problems, as we've really been exploring here, we're talking about innovation and kind of creating the new. But at a practical sense, guys are out there trying to just figure out how to navigate the problems in this just choppy situation that we're all in. What is it? Is it a gut? How do I take it, and what's the learning point or the application here in that particular case?
Well,
Is
I
there an
would,
application?
yes, there is. Absolutely, there is. Um, I would suggest that if you have no space in your life, no place for quiet, no capacity to get still, to unhook your brain from the challenge, uh, if you continue to try to rationally figure it out, like bear down on it harder,
Yep.
you're moving. That move is actually in the opposite direction of an insight.
Okay.
So it's like, okay, let me suspend my. I've done as much rational as I can, and that's important.
Yep.
It creates a kind of tension field or gravitational field, if you will, for an insight. And then you unhook, you go for a walk. Like David said, it happened to him in the shower
Yes.
when you relax and just after waking up, in comes a new idea. And you can enhance that by having some kind of practice, like a quieting practice, a reflective
Yeah.
journaling,
Yeah.
meditational practice. There are many different practices that are known to open up awareness so that you can receive more readily.
I think that's
And
critical.
so
Yeah.
there's an added sort of like requirement now in the midst of all this busyness. I have to find the still point. There's a book by a colleague of ours called Still Moving.
Uh-huh.
You hear the play on words.
Totally.
I'm totally still in motion
Yep.
and I'm still while moving.
Yes.
And that is a recipe for being able to navigate the complexity and the unknown.
Yeah.
If you have none of that capacity, if you haven't developed any of that, it's hard to get a breakthrough.
And that makes sense in your first comment about reach your capacity around development. That
Yeah.
makes sense.
And this kind of intuitive capability can develop at any stage, but it's requirement for integral leading and leading in that kind of complexity. Now, the
And
other
so,
element that I would add to
yeah.
that there are many other elements, but the other element there is you are that to really open up this generative capacity, um, you're going to run more current through your body. You're literally going to run more energy through your body.
Uh-huh.
This sounds a little woo woo, but when you talk to like Federico, he said I had to get all three centers open
Yes.
in
Three
order for
centers:
this
head,
head,
heart,
heart,
gut.
gut.
Hmm.
Got to get
Hmm.
them open. If they're tight and contracted, then
Yep.
nothing can flow. So
Yep.
this is another way of talking about it. This is a very expanded state of flow in the way that we've talked about flow. So in any event, what happens is that when we start to do that, we run into like the light casts shadows, and so the parts of ourselves that are contracted, frightened, scared,
Yep.
start to show up even more. So, like underneath the reactive layer that we talked about, are
Right.
deeper constrictions, and so the other pole, one is opening to the inflow of the
Uh-huh.
other pole of that is to be able to work with the blocks, the shadows, the inner obstacles at a deeper level than even in the move from reactive to creative. We call that shadow work or trauma work, which is becoming big in the field right now.
It is.
So
Yes.
so leaders need to add an additional capacity, which is this capacity to really unblock um, the core distortions that I'm carrying. And I might be carrying those from, they're unconscious. Some of them are pre-verbal,
Yep. Childhood,
intergenerational,
family systems.
cultural,
Yep. Yeah.
all of
Yeah.
that. Because
Yeah.
those are constrictions like taking a hose, and crimping it. The water can't flow. And so, in, in combination with opening ways to open, there's ways to unblock that flow of energy that have to happen, or you don't. Now, the other side of that, the other thing with that is that we're trying to invent a new world, a new way. And if we don't do the shadow work, we re embed the same distortions in what we think is
Mhm.
the new way. So just take gender bias or racism or our relationship to energy or, uh, you know, we if we don't deal with that, deeply, then we just reinvent the same thing,
Another version of it. Yeah.
another version of the
Yeah.
same.
Yeah. So one of the things that we spent some time on that I wanted to make sure that we touched on was this thing called polarity management. So taking two seemingly opposite ways to view problems or tackle whatever it is.
Yeah,
It's that whole idea of integrate. Because is it not true that the integral level of leadership is really about integration and looking at things more holistically? That's
yeah,
the way I understand it. Am I
yeah,
understanding it correctly?
yes, yes,
And so when you look at polarities, right, wrong, black, white, all of the elements that really come around this way versus that way, we've got to be able to broaden and allow greater fluidity to be able to see things differently.
yeah, yeah,
And there could be benefits on both sides. Is that how you see the
yeah,
polarity management practice?
yeah. There's two variations on that. One is polarities, which can be managed with each stage of development. You can manage them more effectively. But a
Yep.
polarity is two really important and positive things that tend to play opposite each other. In the leadership circle
Yep.
profile, it's task and people.
Totally.
Right?
Yep.
That's a polarity. People who are really good on people tend not to be so good on task, but you got to get them both working really, really well in order to be
Right.
effective. So it's optimizing that natural tension. Another one that's built in, we just did a video on it, Bill and I, is conservative, which is a dimension in the bottom
Yes,
half,
I saw that.
playing by the
Uh-huh.
rules, being careful, right? The gift of that is championing what's got us here. It's respecting and honoring and carrying forward the best of what people have given generations to create. How do we protect that and carry it forward as we change, which is purpose, vision, strategy, but the opposite side of the circle?
Yes.
That's a
Yep.
polarity, change versus tradition.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
you need both. If you don't respect the tradition, you throw the baby out with the bathwater. And if you over toggle on the tradition, you throw the baby out with the bathwater and you don't change. We're in that right
Yes.
now as a
Right.
country. We're
Yep.
literally throwing the baby out with the bathwater, which is
Right.
right. So,
So
so that's a
so
polarity.
yes. So it's I just literally last week or the week before I interviewed some improv actors, and they talked about the and proposition
Yeah,
of how you will not leave your fellow actor on the stage. You will never undercut them, throw them under the bus, whatever phrase you want to use. That and proposition. What I'm hearing, the and is what you're talking about. We
right,
need to hold on to tradition and also look towards the future.
right.
That's a way to integrate two seemingly opposites or polarities in this case.
And both have strengths and gifts that we have to honor and respect. And if we
Yes.
over toggle on either of them, we get it out of whack or out of balance.
Yes, absolutely. Which is the management side of polarities, polarity management, but we're really looking for ways to integrate both. That seems to me to be a very I get that. I can get my arms around that. And I think our leaders can as we start
Yeah.
to broaden, because we're trying to broaden ideas.
Yeah, and I think
And
even like more than integrate in the way that I hear you talking about it is really hold and honor and respect and find ways to accomplish both.
yeah,
But optimizing that tension, that'll be an ongoing tension, and the optimization point will move. Like sometimes we need to really move back into some more of the, people oriented stuff, or other times we got to really be hard on task. So that's not a one time here
yes,
is the precise integration point. No,
yes,
you're managing this tension all the time, and the more integral you are, the more you can masterfully find the right balance at any given time
yes.
in
I
in
think
the
that is really a skill set or capability which could really be enhanced by one's ability to sense things, kind of the intuition I see as being a
yes,
critical
yes,
application of intuition in that
yes.
example.
And
Yeah.
sometimes you can't even explain why, but we need to move more in this direction. We need to move more toward respecting what's got us here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's really take stock of what's got us here
Yeah.
versus change. And
Yeah, I was with myself and another consultant. We were with a leadership group just 2 weeks ago over in Europe, and when we did this exercise around diminishing resources, and you started to see how the team system shifted as we pulled resources in this exercise, and how it got to be more reactive, and it's a really interesting exercise to drive home the point that in pressure situations, we are going to go back and hold tighter, which is only going to push it to one of the two poles,
yeah,
which is really why when you talked about consciousness
yeah,
at the very beginning, that consciousness and being able to really understand it in a bigger context is so you can't operate that way. It's too
because you
limiting.
constrict down. When
Yeah.
you react, you constrict, and the whole meeting constricts. And now you're in a field that doesn't support breakthroughs.
Yeah. So what do you this uncertainty thing of being able to navigate? What do you think are, if there were a couple of capabilities for leaders to really work on as they're, maybe I'm at a mid level and I'm wanting to move up a bit more, or maybe I'm at the executive level and struggling with being able to deal with the management and the financial side of it, and then innovation on the other side. We're trying to, what would be a couple of capabilities that you would zero in on that would help them be more effective at integrating opposites? I like your
Yeah.
conservative example, traditional and being able to innovate. So,
Yeah. Well, one that we don't see a lot of, and this is more of a creative level capability, and
okay.
it's the center pole of the profile. It's courage, courageous conversation, authentic
Hmm.
conversation. Can we get really, really good at having difficult conversations in a highly respectful, in a great way,
Okay.
in a way
Yeah.
that really honors the other position, even when I disagree with it?
Okay.
Can we have strong differences expressed and not go reactive, and really learn how to have those conversations well, about
Hmm.
vision, about resources, about strategy, about direction, about lack of trust in the organization, or um, feedback on how we're leading that may be hard to hear. All those things are um, would be honing that would be really important, and then taking it the next level, which we call dialogue,
Huh.
which is the capacity then to sit in the unknown together and listen for what wants. This is this is the quantum language of it. Listen to
Okay.
what the field wants, how the field wants to inform us about the emergent future,
Hmm.
about
Hmm.
what's trying to happen here that we can't rationally yet figure out, but it's in the field.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we have to learn how to get quiet together and really listen, not just to each other, but listen into the very pregnant unknown. Like the unknown is pregnant with possibilities.
Yeah.
Can we get good at receiving, distilling those out, receiving them, and allow ourselves to be surprised by what emerges?
Yeah. I'm getting that. I think that the conversations, the courage, which lives at the true north of the universal model, of being able to have that direct feedback, that ability to communicate very directly, and also elevate. I mean, we're not talking about tearing people down. We're talking about having an open conversation and still be able to go out and have a beer afterwards. Love one another to be able to have those tough conversations, right? Okay, yeah, go for your
One
example.
quick one. My first training when I went out on my own. My very first training was to co-train with Peter Block, who was the guru in the field at the time.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
so here I am co-training with. I had no business co-training with him, so I get up there and I'm completely incoherent. I mean, I
Yeah.
was coherent,
Yeah.
but I was anyway. It was
Well,
terrible.
you were in your own world. I would, okay, I get that.
I
Yep.
was, I was,
Been
I
there.
was. It was completely not my best that day because I was trying to press him. I was,
Right.
And
Right.
anyway, um, so I'm walking back to the back of the room after I get the group in an exercise, and I'm looking at him kind of like this, and
Yeah.
he goes,
Yeah.
and then he
And for our
says,
listeners that didn't see what he did, is he just put his finger in his mouth with this wide open
yeah,
mouth. That's
that
the
gag
message that
reflex, like,
Block told. Yep.
that was
Yeah.
terrible.
It's like, oh, that was awful. Yep.
Yeah. And I looked at him, I go, I know. And then he says, I know you're better than that. What happened to you up there?
Uh,
So, but let's be clear, that sucked.
yeah.
So this ability he was completely open hearted and like very direct. And
Yes.
I learned this from him. That kind of how do I tell the truth but with open heart. So I'm really here for you, and I'm so here for you. I won't let you settle for better less than your best.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
enough. So
Yeah.
it
Or
was
less than.
getting that ability to have very direct, honest, straight, difficult conversations with real respect and open heartedness is a life work.
Yeah. Yeah. And the second part of that second capacity was around being able to calm your systems down, either your individual systems, but also the team system, to be able to calm down and say,
Yep.
what are you guys seeing that maybe we're not seeing? I mean,
Yeah.
are you picking up anything? And be able to have some tolerance to be able to even ask that question, because what it does is give permission for people to
Yeah.
be a little bit more on that sensing. Am I understanding that right? As far
Yeah.
as a practical way to approach it?
Yeah. We had a meeting I was brought in on. Now, this is very important, especially for consultants. He's a very avid Zen practitioner. So
Okay.
he has a daily practice. I have my own daily practice. We show up to meet with the senior leadership team, largest healthcare system in the country,
Okay.
this particular country. We walk in, the CEO is like, okay, here's the agenda. Here's what we got to do. Da, 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 da. We go, oh, wait a minute. Maybe we could just check in. Maybe we could just see how people are doing here as they start this meeting. Now, we knew that the organization lacked a sense of clarity and direction in the midst of the chaos.
Yep.
We slowed them down. I don't remember the other moves we made, but all of a sudden they were in a very different conversation. They were really listening to each other. And 3 days later, they were coming out with a strategic direction and vision for this organization that not only surprised the hell out of them, like nobody had this when we walked in the room, but it was so compelling. They were in tears. Like, I want to give myself to that future. And the key thing was nobody had it. And I think we as consultants and leaders can do this if they learn it. This is an integral practice, mastery and leadership is you can set the field for that kind of conversation where you really break through together on a future that nobody had when you walked in the room.
And what I'm hearing from you, Bob, is that we talk about, leaders bring the weather and setting the conditions. And that's what you're really talking about, is creating
Yes,
the conditions for some of that breakthrough thinking, gut sensing, whatever it is, to start to show up.
right. Creating those conditions, being those conditions,
Yeah. Yeah.
presencing that. When you walk in the room, do you bring a resonant presence that opens up the space
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
by your mere presence?
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is possible. We've seen it done.
Yeah. So, is there anything that, as we wrap up here, is there anything else that perhaps you would want to share, a piece of wisdom, a practice, a way of showing up, whatever it is, that would help leaders, kind of a fundamental core element of leadership that, regardless of where you are in the organization, would be hugely valuable? We've hit a lot of them. Is there anything we've missed?
Well, I don't know if it's a succinct piece of advice, but the very same framework that we're talking about can be used to accelerate the manifestation of the future we're talking about. So as you
Okay.
learn to get access at higher frequencies to this field, this again is Einstein. Einstein said, you can't solve the problem from the consciousness created. What he was actually saying was the future, the new solution, the future, lives at a different frequency than the frequency of the problem.
Okay.
So if you
Yes.
want to manifest it, you have to actually invoke it or declare for it at the frequency. So you can actually learn how to move to literally a different timeline and activate and accelerate the manifestation of what we're trying to create together.
And the way that I get to a different, because we can't leave everybody hanging on this, because the question is, okay, so how do I get to that next frequency level? Is it really about stillness and the things that we've talked about to be able to
Yeah.
move into that it's almost
Yes.
like a different level
Yeah.
of
And that's why we've got a whole Unity Academy, because there's practices here that do that.
yes,
And
yes,
and if I get caught up in my deeper, like, shadow stuff, then I'm reacting, and I'm now at the frequency of the problem.
yeah,
So, all right, so there's a body of work here
okay,
to
yeah,
expand one's awareness to be able to actually do this with power. Now, I think Steve Jobs was inherently capable of this. And he, for all this press he had, when you look at Isaac's um,
Walter Isaacson book, yeah,
his book on him, he comes down
yeah,
at the end and said he has a number of key things there that he was good at. One was intuition. He was an
uh-huh,
intuitive genius. That was first. Second was he could create a reality distortion. He could distort time. They were able to create stuff that nobody thought was possible in time frames that nobody thought was possible consistently.
well, say that again. Is reality distortion?
He
What
called it
what did you say?
a reality distortion capability. People around him said he could distort reality.
Yeah,
And I think that what what that's pointing to is a capacity that comes with an ability to manifest things more directly and faster than the kind of
yeah,
linear sequential ways we have learned. Yeah, a good source on this would be Joe Dispenza's work. This is what he's
oh,
doing. Joe Dispenza's helping people. If you look at what he's doing, he's using energetic practices. He's teaching you
okay,
how to expand your field and your the frequency on which you're operating, and then envision and embody and hold that future as a present reality in a way that actually has a time dilation effect. It distorts. There's a time, and I went to his workshop and I watched people heal. I watched people get out of wheelchairs, because once the right information gets into the body goes, well, I know what to do. The DNA knows what to do. It's just not getting the right information.
yeah,
So you could
yeah,
watch some pretty miraculous stuff happen in 7 days. And they're doing significant research with the University of Southern California, San Diego, on pre and post DNA samples, blood samples, stool samples. And they're seeing shifts toward health that the researchers
wow,
can't explain,
wow,
way beyond clinical trials. So,
mm,
and it's very clear this is a quantum capacity that we all have. We just have never been taught how to access it and use it for
yeah,
creating the future, for creating health, for creating a
wow,
future that is unknown.
We could go on forever. This has been fantastic. It's what I appreciated about it is we had the practical side of relevant and how do I translate it into something I can get my arms around, and also painted a picture of where things are going and what additional capacities are that I think that's where we have an advantage on AI. I think the human element has far more capabilities, but I don't know. I just am pulling that out of the air. But I think as we think about areas where AI will not replace us, I think this is one area that I think has some tremendous potential to grow.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I just thought of it, but I think it's that human capacity. Yeah. This has been great, Bob. Thank you so much. It's an absolute pleasure. Yeah, this was fun. All right. That is a wrap for this episode. Hey, a big thank you out to Bob for sharing his insights, his knowledge, his wisdom, his sense of where leadership is going with all of us as we sort of struggle and are challenged to navigate this new environment in which we're currently in and what is expected to continue on in the future, because we are in unprecedented times. That's an old cliche, but I think it's most relevant, very relevant in today's world. I'm not going to summarize in bullet points on this one, but I am going to zero in on two things that really stood out for me. This idea, the concept that was really unpacked in the Scaling Leadership book that he mentioned was that leaders don't tap out or get to a level of incompetence, but rather they learned that leaders get to a level, a threshold of sort of their development capacity is maxed out. And I thought that was really an interesting idea, because when we start to unpack this thing called the development capacity, it gets down to leaders that can take that next step, that can move above the line, be more creative, have to be able to let go and release what got them to that point to be able to take on new. They need to be able to close some doors. He even referred to it as sort of having some death to some of the things that got us to where we are, for us to be able to embrace new ways of leading. And that was a clear differentiator as far as when they looked at leaders that could take that next step on their creative journey. The other aspect that he talked about was, and I think it's relevant to how we talk about leaders bring the weather, he talked about the conditions. Leaders need to bring the conditions for themselves and their teams to be able to sense more, be more creatively intuitive, rather than clamping down in constriction, which you talked about the metaphor of a hose getting constricted. It's only going to keep us in that reactive state, and that leaders have a huge impact and influence on creating cultures of innovation and creating cultures of that energetic flow, and looking for ways to explore new opportunities and new ways to go to market and new ways to approach problems that have been persistent for all these years. And so those were the two things that really stood out for me as I stepped back from this. And so a big thank you to Bob. This was a great one. For me, it was absolutely fantastic. I hope you enjoyed it. If you've enjoyed this podcast, we ask that you go out to your favorite podcast platform and follow us, subscribe, and if you feel so inclined, leave us a rating or a review, because that does help other people find this particular podcast. And I'm going to end on this one note, that we as leaders do bring the weather. We set the conditions. We have a lot of influence around cultures and microclimates within our teams. And so we need to be more conscious and aware of how we are showing up individually, and also how our teams are showing up. And so my challenge, as always, is to go out with that lead, with that courage, to be able to call things out, give people direct feedback, being courageous around being authentic and sort of having those difficult conversations. Also go out and lead with authenticity. That's that realness, that self-authored self that Bob was talking about. And of course, humility. Until next time, thanks for listening, and stay in touch.